when we're driving around and we see people, generally we can assume they're mentally ill. And part of the reason that they're on the streets is because of the system that we have, which is broken. And the most vulnerable, who maybe don't donate to any kind of political campaign, they don't vote, they're not a big voice, they're not on social media, they have no following.
Right.
And so these people who are the invisible in our society, politicians and the government doesn't really care about. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I know a lot of the mothers of some of those people and their stories. They're real families, all walks of life. Not just in a, like, we can think it's just a family that does drugs over here and, living in the ghetto somewhere. It's not. It's
everybody.
Everybody. It's everybody. This is our system.
This is Fixed on Jesus. Hey everybody, welcome back to Fixed on Jesus, the podcast at Center Church by members of Center Church for Center Church here in Gilbert, Arizona. We're on site in sunny Gilbert, Arizona, where the sun shines 330 days of the year and we get sick of it, but that's where we live. So Mark Johnson Jr. is across the way. How you doing, Mark?
Good. How are you? I thought we talked about not disclosing our location. Like, we don't want people breaking down the door to get in.
You know what? Gilbert's, yeah, well, we'll risk it. Behind the glass, we have Heather Corbitt. She is excited as always. She actually has some sparklers back there, so it's really bright. And also we have Deborah Geesling, who we're in the midst of a conversation about her son, Seth.
Yeah.
So
thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. I mean, I know it's hard to make your schedule work out like that, but here we are again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. So when last we were talking, Seth was arrested. His brothers called the police because he had a psychotic break.
Actually, he wasn't arrested at this point.
Okay.
But he was off his meds.
So, he'd been off his meds for a good time.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and he was escalating.
The police come, they taser him.
Correct.
But he's not arrested.
He's not arrested because they recognize that he's in a serious mental health crisis. And, I mean, they could have arrested him because he pushed an officer down.
And they didn't arrest him.
No. Which is amazing.
That's amazing.
God's grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that could have escalated if you have a different police officer on site where.
Totally.
Yeah.
It happens, more than it should. So they took him to a small hospital on Gilbert. It's on Power Road, Gilbert Hospital. Just kind of took him over there. And I think he was strapped down. I wasn't home. I was still at this conference. All this is happening. My husband had finally got there, and he went to the hospital with my oldest son. And it was just chaotic. They brought him in there. They had him strapped down to a bed. And the doctor came out and talked to Matthew and Zach and said, "I'm so sorry, but your son has schizophrenia."
Mm-hmm.
And, we were just...
And he could tell just by what was going on right there.
Right, yeah. And so it was, we were just in shock. Like this was totally new to us. Well, what does that mean?
Did you know what did you and your husband know what that meant at the time?
No, we did not. I didn't even know what psychosis was back then. I think we talk about it far more now than we did back then, but no, I had no idea. And all we had was a card, because what they did was he's 18 now, so he's an adult. He is incapacitated by his illness. He's basically out of his mind. He can't reason. He's, believing all kinds of things, seeing all kinds of things that aren't there. And so in our state, a lot of states actually don't have this, believe it or not, in our county. And I'm kind of want to set the stage too for our county, Maricopa County. Back in the 80s, there was a lawsuit that was brought against the state called the Arnold versus Sarn lawsuit. Basically said Arizona is not taking care of the seriously mentally ill, forced the state to put in this system. So if we had lived in any other county in America, this would not be playing out how I'm going to describe right now at all. There wouldn't be this process. So they transferred him to a place called the Urgent Psychiatric Center, UPC in Phoenix. I had no idea what that place was. All I had was a card from the police officer saying, here's the number. This is where your son's going to be. So the next morning, I call that number, and again, we're in shock. Like, what's going on? And we don't know what to do next. I call them, and I talk to somebody who answers the phone, probably a behavioral health technician, and I said, my son Seth is down there. How's he doing? I'm his mom, and the guy laughs. He said, your son is Seth? Whoa, give him the number to a homeless shelter. Pack his bags. He is a psychopath. And he's laughing.
No way.
Yes.
This is at that what?
Yes.
At this urgent.
At this, it's a.
What is this place called again?
It's an evaluation center. It's the Urgent Psychiatric Center, UPC.
UPC. And so the person who answers the phone at UPC says, this guy's a psycho. You should just kick him out in the streets.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you. And welcome also to HIPAA. So now there's HIPAA's in play because he's 18. So no one talks to us. No one asks us anything about his history. They don't even ask us if he's on medication. They ask us nothing. And they tell us nothing. They won't talk to us. That was it. That was my only welcome to the system. And I literally hung up the phone and I dropped to my knees. I was like I felt like I was in this well that there's nobody getting me out of this well. I'm just, what is this? What's happening? And by God's grace, there is a woman in our church who struggles with some mental health challenges, and she called me out of the blue then. And on she didn't know what was going on, totally unrelated matter. And she pulled me out of that well. I told her what was going on, and she said, okay, some of the people that work in those places are not educated, and you can't just listen to what that person said. And so she helped me, kind of gave me a little bit of a bearings about what was about to happen. And so then I was able to breathe again. And so we just had to really push, for information, and they wouldn't give it to us. So we just general stuff. What happens is when they're in these evaluation centers, in our county, we can petition, like if our loved one is danger to self or danger to other, they call it, you can go down, fill out a form, it goes before a judge, and they'll say, oh, this person probably needs to be picked up and seen. They'll send police. That's how it would work. But he came in through a different route, through the police.
Yeah.
So obviously he was very sick. He was very incapacitated, and they knew he needed to be further evaluated. So they sent him to another hospital that has a mental health court. And he went through that process. My husband, my sons had to testify, everybody who witnessed everything in front of him there, what they saw. And he was very sick. And so they placed him on a court-ordered treatment, which means he has to engage with treatment. He has to participate in treatment, take his medications for a year in order to stay in the community, in order, he's got to do this. And if he doesn't do that, he could be picked up and put back in the hospital. So that's kind of the clincher that kind of makes them say, well, I'm going to take my meds because I don't want to go back to the hospital. But Seth, they couldn't stabilize him. He just wasn't doing well. And so they transferred him to another hospital in Phoenix called St. Luke's, which only takes the court order. Well, they take the court order patients, and it's this dreary, it's like down in the basement. It's this dreary.
It was a sad place.
Yeah. It's not a place of where you want anyone to be. And so he was there for a while. And again, we have no information. We don't know what he's diagnosed. We
just know where he is.
Right. We know where he is because we're tracking with that. And then one night, a psychiatrist who worked there was just so kind and called us. And they could have talked to us if Seth had signed a release of information, but he was not in his right mind. So he's not able to even understand that. So he just called my husband and I and talked with us and answered all of our questions and said, your son, he's very ill. I'm going to recommend he be placed on an ACT team. When we release him, they assigned him to this clinic. It was a really good clinic with a good doctor. It's quite miraculous. There's not a lot of ACT teams. There's not a lot of
What did you say? At team?
ACT team.
Yeah.
It's ACT, stands for Assertive Community Treatment. It's more intense for the more acute patients.
Okay.
So he's got like a 6-member team, and they have less of a caseload, lighter caseload, so they can do more with the clients, they call them. We don't call them patients anymore, clients. So again, we're just, okay, that sounds good. And so they released him to our house with this ACT team in place. And so then for that first year, we were able to somewhat manage with him at home. And he was with the ACT team. The ACT team would come visit him every week. The doctor was really good, really explained things to me. And so that court order, it ends after a year.
And he stayed on his meds the whole time?
He stayed on it the whole time. And then he told the doctor at the end of that year, I'm going to take my meds. I'll keep taking them. No problem.
Yeah.
So then the team and the doctor decided, okay, well, we don't have any reason to put him back on the court order. So they didn't renew it. And within 3 days, he stopped taking his medications. He stopped. And
Did they get your input about that?
no,
Did they usually, so parents, caregivers, do they get a say in this usually?
no,
So it's just based on the doctor's call, based on how someone who's mentally ill, what they say.
correct.
That doesn't seem like a good basis to measure
No.
things.
Especially the person, they're asking that person, are you going to take your meds?
That doesn't seem
Is
wise.
it common for people struggling with that to stop taking their meds at will?
It's very common.
Super
It's
common.
very common. And a good portion of people I've learned with schizophrenia it's called anosognosia. They do not understand. They literally do not understand that they are sick. The reasoning center is affected. So why do I need to take my meds? Why do I have to take this? And they have side effects. So I can understand why they might be, I don't want to take this
Sure.
med.
Yeah, right.
There's no need for me. They probably don't even really understand the state of mind they were in or what they were doing.
Right.
There's still, he was doing well, but he still had the symptoms from the psychosis. It was getting better as the year went on, but it still was not, he wasn't the same Seth
Yeah.
as before he had that break. There was cognitive differences in him. And
He wasn't aware of that though, but someone
No.
looking from the outside that's close to him, it's very discernible.
it's very obvious.
Okay.
But to him, we're all the ones that have the problem.
For example, as one who walked with him during some of this time, he talked about not taking his medication for a solid 10 years.
Correct.
It's only in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years he hasn't brought that up. But for 10 years. And so we would say, no, Seth, you need to take your medication. And I talked to him probably about this dozens and dozens of times. He was convinced that his mom, that Deborah, was a witch.
Yeah.
Deborah, are you a witch? Okay.
He was
I didn't
convinced
think so,
she
but-
was a witch, or at least dabbled in witchcraft.
Did you dabble in witchcraft? Okay. You're on the
I
record.
didn't. I
Well,
promise
she
you.
was, she was a witch and dabbled in witchcraft because she wanted Seth to take his medication.
Right.
And, no matter how much we talked about that, it just it gained no purchase in his mind.
Right.
And
He,
so
he was convinced.
he was,
Like
yeah.
that was his reality.
Yeah, and we'd be in rooms and he would say, see that guy over there? And he'd point to this guy and say, he hates me. And I'm like, Seth, he doesn't even know you. He's not thinking about you.
Yeah.
Or he'd just have these delusions, right?
Right.
That everybody was sort of plotting against him,
Right.
right? That was
Right.
big, wasn't it?
It was huge. He thought the whole entire town of Gilbert was, watching him and after him, and which makes sense if reality is breaking away, you're trying to make sense of it.
Mhm.
I can't imagine what that's like.
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah, so fearful. And yeah, so there was a lot of things. He still had, quirks and things, and we still were on deck. It wasn't like he came home that year and everything was just great. He still was struggling, and we were still almost taking turns sleeping, my husband and I, like being on watch. And we'd wake up and he had painted his whole entire room with oil, like with his fingers all over his, just strange things that he was doing. But he was kind of somewhat, we could kind of redirect him at least during that year, somewhat.
Yeah.
But still, and then that second year, it all started again. And he, within a few days, and he at first recognized it and he said, I think I need to go to the hospital. I think something was wrong. But then he got to this point very quick where it was like, no, I don't need to go to the hospital. I need to take my meds. So that point, we had to do the petition, my husband and I, and re-petition him. And the team actually, he was still with that clinic. They kind of helped us then. They were assisting us.
So when you say petition, you mean contact the ACT team or the hospital or with Seth's personally?
So
what does petitioning mean in this context?
That's a great question. Not enough of us understand this process that's available. But anybody, if you are with somebody who is struggling, you can go to the, UPC, the Urgent Psychiatric Center in Phoenix. There's also a place in Mesa called CBI, and there's a place in Peoria called Recovery Innovations. There's 3 centers, and you fill out a form describing what's going on, and then kind of have to describe the worst of what you're seeing, and you have to have seen it within the week. And then that goes before a judge. The judge looks at that and says, okay, this person is a candidate for court-ordered treatment. We should pick him up. So they contact the police in your city. You don't know when the police are going to come to your house or go to the place where they are, if they're there. But they send, it's usually a crisis intervention trained police officer. They're trained in crisis situations, and they go out, and that's what happened. They came to our house, and they came and got Seth. They were very kind. They said, Seth, we gotta go down to the center, and they put handcuffs on them and take him in the back seat of a police car. And I can tell you, this process is not fun for anybody. It's brutal to watch your child be taken away like that. And this whole thing is grueling. And so they take him to the psych center, evaluate him there, and they say, yes, this person needs, to go through the process. There's a second process, that other hospital where they have the mental health court. Now, here's the clincher right now in our state. If there's not a bed over here at this hospital, they can only hold him here for 72 hours. So every month, about, more than 300 people are just let go to the streets.
And where they go to the streets, right?
Straight to the streets.
And so so many of the homeless population in our state is made up of people who are mentally ill.
Yes.
So when we're driving around and we see people, generally we can assume they're mentally ill. And part of the reason that they're on the streets is because of the system that we have, which is broken. And the most vulnerable, who maybe don't donate to any kind of political campaign, they don't vote, they're not a big voice, they're not on social media, they have no following.
Right.
And so these people who are the invisible in our society, politicians and the government doesn't really care about. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I know a lot of the mothers of some of those people and their stories. They're real families, all walks of life. Not just in a, we can think it's just a family that does drugs over here and, living in the ghetto somewhere. It's not. It's
everybody.
Everybody. It's everybody. This is our system.
Right.
Yeah.
The system. Why do you think the system's so broken?
Because, I think you hit on it. They don't have a voice, this group. They cost more probably, but it's a smaller percentage. We're paying for it in other ways. We're paying for it in our criminal justice. Our homeless, complex that we have set up. We're paying for it in tragedies that happen, everyday tragedies in families.
So with better government policy, we could avoid crime. We could avoid needless death. We could avoid people who could be cared for with kindness, we can avoid thrusting them out into the streets with just just a few different policy changes. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
And
It's not hard. It can be done.
And part of the reason it's not that we don't get traction is because nobody cares. Is that right?
Yes.
Like the
That's
governor doesn't care, Republican or Democrat, the governor doesn't care because there's no votes in this, is there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the problem. Yep. You nailed it. That's it.
So back to Seth. So fortunately you do have a bed, right? At this
Yes.
facility. And so he gets a bed.
Yes. He gets a bed. He gets placed. Again, we go through this whole process of having to testify. He sees 2 psychiatrists. They're assigned a lawyer, so they have rights.
Sure.
It's not like we're just forcing somebody.
Yeah, because one of the things that's in people's mind is like the sort of the American book or movie where you have someone interned in a facility that doesn't belong there, and
Right.
it's done unjustly, and it's done without cause, and it's done to get rid of somebody.
Right. That does not happen anymore. That's
If that happened in the past, it doesn't happen now.
right. It happened in the past, right? But not now. They want them out of the hospital as fast as they can. There's a lot of reasons why. We could do another podcast on that.
Yeah, probably some of them are financial.
Oh, huge.
Who's
Yes.
bearing the cost of their stay in a place like
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Let's talk about Seth. Let's follow Seth's story here. So Seth is he's starting to get care. You have to go before this.
Right, we got to do this again. We're doing this, and this time, I think it was both my husband and I that did the petition. So we both had to testify in front of Seth, and
Which
That's not fun.
That's got to be so hard to just say my son is physically and mentally incapable of taking care of himself. He's a threat to himself,
right,
and you have to say that with him right there.
right.
What was that like?
Oh my gosh, it's gut wrenching. It's traumatic. You have to sit there, and not only that, but you have to give specifics, like an example of what he said or did. And he's not a bad. It's not because he's evil. He's sick.
Right.
He's sick. He did this. He didn't ask for this.
Right.
So, but we have to do that so he can get help, so we can get treatment. Like he needs treatment to stop. You've got to stop that the psychosis that's going on. You've got to bring that down. And so,
If behind you have a church family that's saying, well, the reason you're there is because your sin and Seth's sin.
oh my gosh,
What would that have done? This is your fault somehow, or it's his fault somehow, and so we're going to counsel that way. What would that have done?
I don't think I could have walked through this if I didn't have a church behind me supporting me, and my husband and loving us and saying, we don't have the answers, but we're right here with you, and asking us, what do you think God's showing you? What do you have the faith for? And we're going to support you in that. And if someone was not doing that, my son wouldn't have gotten the care. I wouldn't have had the confidence.
You think he'd be homeless today?
Oh, I know he would be, or dead. I'm convinced he would be. I know.
So people who maybe are coming under the sway of those that are saying, schizophrenia is not real. It's imaginary. It's a unicorn, as some people are saying.
It's a construct.
It's just some kind of construct.
Mm-hmm.
Does real damage to real people. And
Yes.
it would have done tremendous damage to your family and Seth. Yes.
It would have. Yes, it would have. It would have affected every area. It would have affected my relationships with my kids, my husband. We wouldn't be standing. I don't know. We would have. There would have been so much guilt that we would have carried and thought it was our fault, and we wouldn't have had the confidence to go forward. And I mean, doing the involuntary treatment process is so hard. It's so hard, but it's so loving, and that's everything.
Mm. Did you think the temptation would have, if someone had told you that back then, the temptation would have been to cover it up or hide it because you would feel shame?
Oh, yes.
Rather than you have a church family and a Bible that speaks to some of these things, and they're behind you with love and grace the same way our Savior gives us love and grace. Whereas if someone said, this is particularly your fault, and you didn't believe that, or even if you did, let's say you did, you would feel shame. And if you didn't, you would hide it. Those are not those are not helpful.
No, and knowing my husband and I, we would have, because we were already tempted to feel a little bit like that, like isolated, because all the other families my son's age were, they're graduating high school, going to college, getting married, doing good. And we're like, if we're not, we're calling the police. So there was that temptation there that we were like, we're not going to withdraw. We're going to press in. We would have totally withdrawn. We would have isolated ourselves. We just would have been shut down, and who knows, we would have been shipwrecked. I'm not saying that lightly, because it was so hard to do that.
Yeah.
So this teaching that schizophrenia is not real and is a construct does positive harm to people.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of people running around saying, I'm going to sin. Well, because I have schizophrenia and that's the card I'm playing. I haven't ever experienced that. Do you see that happening often?
Never. I have never seen that. And then if it's not real, then why would I need to try to get treatment for my son? Why would I try to get him medication? If I hadn't done that,
he wouldn't be alive.
He wouldn't be alive, and he wouldn't be doing as well as he's doing right now.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have gone to the other side.
Is he a Christian?
Yes.
He is.
He's a Christian.
Yes, he is. I've seen it.
Yeah, he is.
All right. So back to the involuntary piece of this. So how does that resolve?
Well, the second year, they gave him different medications. So hospital can give them any kind of medications.
Sure.
They didn't give him the same medications he was on that year when he was doing good. They gave him different medications, released him to our home on those medications.
Goodness.
And we felt he was not ready to be released. And at this point, I wasn't a guardian and didn't have, release of information signed by Seth. So we're stuck. We're releasing him. They tell us they declare he's ready to.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. They're in a hurry because it's costing them money every day he stays there, and he's got a place to live. The first question they ask you is, "Oh, where's his address?" "Oh, he lives with you." That's the discharge plan right there, which you don't know that. And then so they're like, "Okay, we're going to release him back to you. He's got an ACT team. He is not stable. He is not doing well, and he is not the same." And in fact, some of his delusions, they're changing. They're a little bit different. He's still thinking. We had a book, like a coffee table book, and he thought the picture was talking to him. He's still doing these kind of things, and he's not showing progress. And in fact, he's starting to get worse, and he's starting to walk around at all hours of the night in the neighborhood, and we're starting to get afraid. And so that next year, I think we petitioned him 2 or 3 more times with the team, with their agreement, with the doctor's agreement. They saw the same things we were seeing. His ACT team was seeing it. And so we petitioned, and every time he usually wouldn't get past the evaluation center. They bring him to the evaluation center and say, he's fine. And I remember one lady, I said, he's fine. Well, he's so fine. Why don't you take him home tonight and you take care of him this weekend? And she just kind of mocked me and said, well, I would do that. And I said, you go ahead, take him, see how you'll do. Because he wasn't doing well. And we had a younger son at home that we're trying to keep safe and help him still get through, have a normal life, have some stability. So he is, we have friends in the church who are having him stay with them for like a week. And we would lock our doors at night. And again, not because he was evil or a psychopath, or under God's judgment. He just was not thinking clearly. So that year was a nightmare, and we lost Seth by the time, because they had changed his medication so much. He had lost so much cognition. By the end of the year, we were drowning. Our family was drowning. We were like, we cannot do this anymore. And I was at a NAMI support group. I went to this, they have a family-to-family class that's really good. And a woman there said, the next time he's in the hospital, you need to tell them he can't come home. You need to start looking for, a residential home. And which was, again, grueling.
Because you think, I'm his mom. He can come wherever I am all the
Right.
time. Yeah, right.
Right. And I'm a Christian. I should be taking care of my son. You
Right.
know, it's my responsibility. But my husband, we were like, it was clear we couldn't function this way anymore. And so we were all drowning together. And so it was at Christmas that we had to get him. I said, I pushed. I was a fighter. So I didn't care. I said, I want him in a home that is in our city. I can go visit him. And, and they didn't really like dealing with me. So I kind of figured that out. And then then I would get what I wanted for him, but I didn't care because I said what he needed. And so he got placed in a home. It was a temporary home. It was a behavioral health residential facility, but it was Christmas time. And again, it was just traumatic. So that, and he was not stable. He really was not. And once he was there, it was actually in the same neighborhood as a friend that was going to church, which again, every time God would meet us these really unique ways to say, I'm with you. I'm with Seth. And, but within 3 months, the state started pushing for him to be moved out of this home, telling us that he was too sick for this home. He needed a higher level of care. Well, there is no higher level of care. And the places that they offered were like apartments with another person who is mentally ill. No oversight, no staff. And we said, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So we went toe to toe with them. Good night. I don't know how many meetings that we had to fight. And one of the places that when they had this big staffing where they brought in the state's insurance company came, it was a big deal. They were trying to push Seth out of there. And they offered us a boot camp as an option.
Camp. Oh my goodness.
And my husband and I, we were about to hit the ceiling. We said, our son has schizophrenia, has a disability. He doesn't need to go to a boot camp. Doesn't need discipline. He's sick. And so even the system itself seemed to work against what these people have, what they're really struggling with. And so we fought back. And that's when I started going, I've got to raise my profile or he's not going to make it. They're going to kick him out because he's so sick. And
so kicking him out meant putting him on the streets.
Well, they would say that.
I know, but that's what it meant.
They would put him at risk. He would be in a place where he'd be at risk. He would
have gone to an apartment with someone else and been out of there.
Absolutely.
With no staff.
Absolutely.
Like in 10 minutes.
Right. He couldn't cook or shop for himself or
Yeah,
or
no
who
knows what would have happened with those two living together.
I know.
Putting
Lord
two
knows.
people struggling with mental health in the same place with no oversight. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's probably not a very good plan.
Right.
And that was the state's plan at the time.
That was their plan because.
But he doesn't vote. He doesn't donate to campaigns. He doesn't have a good profile on social media. He's not important in their eyes, and so he doesn't matter.
That's right. And so that's when I realized I have got to be a squeaky wheel. And I went to the media. I went to legislators. I knocked on doors. I'm a mom with a high school degree. And all I wanted to do with my life at this stage was raise kids and take care of grandkids, babysit my grandkids and make chocolate chip cookies. That was my goal for the rest of my life.
Right.
And, but no, I had to keep going. And I knew that if I didn't become a squeaky wheel,
Nothing would happen.
his life was at stake, literally.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure in this episode, in the notes, that we link that squeaky wheel that you speak of. And I think I came across one of them in prepping for this. You started a podcast. I
did.
And who would you say that would be geared toward? And we'll make sure we get the name of it.
And what's it called?
Yeah.
Well, I'm on Substack. It's the Mama Bear Diaries.
Okay.
Mama Bear Diaries, cool.
And so I really want to reach, well, first of all, families that are going through this and that are probably alone, because I felt alone. I mean, I had my church, but this is the getting him help part. And also just everyday people that don't know about it. Explain these things. It's just common sense and also the Christian community really too, the churches. I really want them to see these people and see an opportunity to care for these families.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
And you started a nonprofit organization too, right?
We did.
What's it called?
P82, Project Restoration.
Okay, and what's the goal of Project Restoration?
Our ultimate goal is to open up a home for men with serious mental illness or create kind of a different kind of housing model.
Okay.
And we right now we have a support group for families online. I'd love to see another church catch a vision for this and
Sure.
get on board with that. But these families are isolated. We have families from all over the country and one from Canada, and they all say the same thing. They've been looking for a Christian support in this area, and it's very hard to find.
Which is not. They should not be. Now,
No.
talk to, like, I was here, so I know some of this answer, and so I'm asking for all of us. Like, how did the church help and support, and what was the counseling like? I mean, because, like, if you're I'm a pastor, right? So pastors want to know the answer. They want to know a solution. They want to know what to say. And so you come in, and you have stories like this. The pastor doesn't know what to say.
No.
What was helpful?
I think that starting there is helpful. That your dad sat at our kitchen table, and during some of these parts that were the stories I've told, and you too, he didn't have the answer. I don't know what to do, but let's pray.
Mm,
And
sounds like Trey.
he would pray with us. We never received directive advice. It was always caring for our soul. I remember one day, you may not remember this, but I was literally, you didn't know this. I was on the floor, face down in my bedroom on my carpet, literally paralyzed in the middle of all this. I think it was that second year. And you called out of the blue to see how I was doing. And you read to me 1 Peter 1, 3-9. Do you remember that? And I said,
Nope.
I don't even know how to pray. I don't even know what to ask God. And you said, sometimes all you can say is help, and that's enough.
Groanings.
And just that little just picked me up like, okay, all right. And it helped me. That's my favorite passage now, that section.
It's a good passage, yeah.
But just being there and just having that humility and not being directive about it, because there's so much we don't know about schizophrenia, but we do know that there's real suffering happening. There's real.
Right. I mean, it's tempting to walk away from messes and just go, let me just let this, like, we're not saying pastors are not professionals.
Right.
We're not professional, psychiatrists, but we can walk with people as they suffer. I mean, that's our job.
Right.
And not just to delegate that to other people who, are professionals.
Right.
And so,
Yeah. And also, like, you would pastors, I'm really close to Trey's, your mom, Charlotte.
yeah, I know.
So
aware.
she just bouncing things off, being okay to, she drove with me one time when Seth ran away, and she didn't give me advice. She didn't say, do you ever think about giving Seth, some vitamins, or do you think about, she didn't say anything. She just drove with me. And I did not feel, it's shameful when your kid runs away.
Right.
And all the other kids
They're not running away.
they're quoting the Bible, and they're doing great,
right.
bringing people to the Lord. And she just did that. That just meant so much to me, that she was just there. People were just there. People in our church. One gentleman came and sat when Seth ran away, just sat with us. He sat on our couch. We didn't even say anything. We just sat there with us. And there were people that also visited Seth in the hospital, which that just means so much to a family.
Yep.
Just simple.
Yep, it is.
It makes a big difference. So,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. We want to hear even more as long as your schedule permits it. We'll make sure to link all of your P82 and your podcast. I actually watched it on YouTube, so we'll put that one on there too. One thing we did want to draw your attention to, once again, coming up on June 24th at 7 p.m. What are we doing, Rich?
We're recording our 100th podcast episode, Mark.
You're not as excited this time because we just heard some really heavy.
Yeah, I mean, like,
context.
I don't just, Yeah.
You can't just give a full.
Well, I'm excited about that.
Yes.
It's 100 episodes. It's hard to believe we're now
Yes.
100 episodes in almost. So
Right.
we want everybody to come and celebrate that with us, and so just come behind the curtain and see the magic and enjoy our 100th episode. Right?
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
And if you're just tuning in now, make sure to go back and listen to part 1. This is part 2. And there's additional parts coming. So thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at production@centergilbert.com. We just love you. And thanks for coming in, Deborah.
Absolutely. Next time we'll talk about how Seth is doing now.
Okay.
Yes.
And then
That's the
about
good
how to
part.
help people.
Yes.
So have a great one, everybody. We'll see you next time.